It is Friday night, and here we are at another Pastor's Roundtable. Good evening, Doc.
Happy Sabbath, my friend. Happy Sabbath, man. It's
Happy
good to be
Sabbath.
here.
Yes, indeed, indeed,
It is
indeed.
good to be.
We
Listen, we're
are,
missing somebody.
yeah, we are.
We're missing somebody, Pastor Paul.
Man,
I don't know. We're missing somebody.
there's a feeling. It's just different when Doc Wade is not
That's
with
right.
us. But we know he is about his Father's business tonight, and so we are keeping
Right,
him
right.
lifted up and praying that whatever his hands are in this evening, that they will be prospered. And thank you for joining us tonight on a Friday night edition of the Pastor's Roundtable. I know that everybody's not used to seeing us on Friday night yet. Dr. Henry, what's up with that, man? What are we doing? What's going on? Friday
Listen,
nights,
man.
man.
Listen. Sometimes ministry gets busy, right? And I know that sometimes our guests, at least one of them tonight, this is the best night for him because of a workshop and some things that he's doing. But we wanted to get him on so that he could share his expertise. And so, there'll be sometimes as we go from week to week where Friday night might be, the night that we do Pastors Roundtable. We probably want them to put it in the chat to tell us how do they feel about it. What do they think?
Yeah. We got a number of you last week. Was it? Did we do Friday night last week as well? It's 2 weeks
We
in a
did
row.
Friday night last week. Yeah,
right.
this
It's
is
2 weeks in a
weeks
row.
in a row.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, listen. Some of you chimed in. Some of you said somebody said both last week when we said you prefer Sabbath afternoons or Friday night. Somebody said both. But we got a number of you that said you prefer this slot, the Friday night slot. Let us know. Let us know if you're watching this on the replay and you can't comment live. We want you to put your preference in the chat for us. So go ahead and put that in the chat. Just let us know. Do you prefer the Friday night, the Sabbath afternoon? We want to adjust. When we started this, Dr. Henry, we started this in at the very beginning of the pandemic and the quarantine.
Right.
Sabbath afternoons were like there was nothing going on in the space. Churches were closed, so it was prime time. I mean, we would finish a live and we would have like 2,000-3,000 people who have been on Pastor's Roundtable. Now it's more like 200 or 300 on Sabbath afternoons.
People are back in the building.
Churches are open.
On Sabbath afternoon.
Yeah.
Yes,
all of that stuff.
So taking place. Yeah, a lot of things are taking place. So
absolutely.
So we're trying. But again, in the chat, let us know if this is a good night for you. Let us know and let us know your preference. Pastor Paul, this week has been a heavy week.
Look at this. Who says he saw Pastor at the Oakwood Academy game, tried to get an autograph, but he ignored him. Man, celebrities these days, boy. we got to get on him for that, Boo.
That's right.
Heavy week, you said, Doc. Heavy week. Talk to me, man.
Heavy week. Well, we started this week off. We were actually at a funeral service together. Pastor Paul, you preached a powerful message there at one of our at our former church. There was a member there, and he was a late pastor by the name of Tony Assett, and he passed away. So we were there on Sunday, and we saw a lot of people, that we grew up with. That was encouraging to know that they were there to support the family at that time. And then from then, there were meetings upon meetings this week, and things are just busy. I mean, things are happening, and we just want to just continue to pray for the pastors because life gets busy. Pray for the families that are bereaving, that are in bereavement right now, because things are very difficult. When you lose a loved one. So what a busy week. What a very very busy week.
And that's a great segue into tonight's topic. When you think about the work of pastors. Pastors have done more funerals over the past 2 years in clumps and in bunches than perhaps at many other times in the past. Just trying to figure out, how to navigate ministry in times like these, coming out of pandemics. You've got churches that are They've got a lot of churches. They're at like anywhere between 40 and 60% of their pre-pandemic crowds.
Right.
Some churches are not, the finances that they used to have, they don't have access to. Facilities are in some cases, are kind of falling apart. Now, there are some that
Yes.
are doing great. Some churches are doing
Yeah.
wonderful, but
Yeah.
others are still trying to navigate and trying to figure out. And so there's a lot of stress that a lot of pastors and a lot of pastors' families are bearing right now. And so
Hmm.
that's what we want to talk about tonight. That's what's on the table.
That's what's
We're,
on the table. Yeah.
that's what's on the table tonight. We're talking about the stressors that affect your pastor, your pastoral family. And we'd like to know, some of you are out there tonight and you know there are some things, some stressors that are affecting your pastoral family. And, when the pastor is experiencing stresses, then the church, it's kind of a trickle down effect.
That's
Everybody
right.
kind of sees it, knows it in one way or another. And so we want to talk about that tonight. But we'd like for
Hmm.
you, even at the beginning of our discussion tonight, if you can pinpoint some of the things that you see or that you feel are stressors for your pastor and your church during times like this, go ahead and drop that in the chat. We'd like to know where you are on that. But that's what's on the table tonight, Dr. Henry. Who's at the table this evening?
Well, let me tell you, tonight we have some people who understand family and understand stressors, and people who have not only understand it, but they're teaching this to different segment groups. And so tonight we have Nathaniel Gracia, Dr. Nathaniel Gracia. Let me tell you something. He is currently the Family Life Director for the South Atlantic Conference.
All right.
Formerly, he was a pastor. Then he was also a ministerial director for North Jamaica Conference. So he deals specifically with pastors and families. And so we are so just just grateful to have him being with us tonight as we talk about stressors that impact the family. And then we have Dr. Curtis Fox. Dr. Curtis Fox, this is my teacher. He taught me while I was
All
doing
right.
the DMin program at Andrews University. He is an adjunct professor, Loma Linda, Andrews University. He is also a therapist as well, and a pastor. And so it's so good to have Dr. Curtis Fox on with us tonight.
Hey, well, let's bring them on and introduce them to everybody. Gentlemen, welcome. Good evening. Happy Sabbath. What an honor and a privilege it is for us to have you tonight here on the Pastor's Roundtable. We thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. We're going to begin with a word of prayer. I'm going to ask Dr. Henry to just give us a word of prayer before we get started. And then after that, we're going to give both of you an opportunity to address the audience before we jump in to our questions tonight. Dr. Henry.
Let's pray. Father, Lord, thank you for this platform where we could talk about relevant issues. We ask now, God, that as we get ready to talk about the area of stress, Father, give us wisdom, understanding, Lord. Help us to come up with some coping strategies so that we might be able to cope with the stressors of life. Thank you for our guests that are on today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, gentlemen, it is our practice here at Pastor's Roundtable that we give our guests just an opportunity to say hello to our audience, to just share maybe a little bit more in detail where you are, what you're doing, what it's like there. We know we did not read your full bio and give everybody all of the details of your resume and all that, but anything that you'd like to share, we'll start with Dr. Garcia and then move to Dr. Fox. We're going to give you, so these aren't pastors, Dan. I can give them a little more time. I'm gonna
No,
give
no,
you.
they're pastors.
Oh,
They're
they're
preachers.
pastors.
They're
Okay,
evangelists.
all right. So I'm back. Okay, all right. I'm gonna
Yeah, I
give you
know.
47.9 seconds. You have to just share tonight. Let's go start with Dr. Garcia and then go to Dr. Fox.
Yes, we are delighted to be. I'm delighted to be here today, and also to have my friends with me. And not too long ago, we had a conference together. Dr. Curtis, he did such a great job, and I'm delighted to be here. So we are with South Atlantic Conference, Family Ministry Department, and also we deal with grief. And as we are preparing for a grief retreat, I can tell you the relevance of tonight's topic. A lot of people are stressed,
Mm,
living with anxiety. and even depression. So I commend you and I thank you for having us. Of course, we have dealt with pastors in the past as a ministerial director, as Dr. Henry said. So we will share momentarily about what can be done and how this is affecting all pastors and individuals, um, as we will share together.
Mm-hmm.
All right, awesome. Dr. Fox.
So good to be here and with you, great guys, and those who are seeking to make an impact in ministry. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. So, yes, I've been a pastor for many years, actually, many, and I started working in the Caribbean, but I have been around for a long time, working as a teacher, professor too at Loma Linda University, as Dr. Henry said. So I have taught family life, marriage and family therapy and family studies and those kinds of things. But I've also served at the seminary for several years and have been teaching some courses that I believe are important for pastoral development as well. I love talking with pastors. I love engaging with them in all kinds of ways, and sometimes as a friend, sometimes as a mentor, and certainly as someone who can mentor me as well. For I continue to seek those experiences as well. I am always delighted to have the opportunity to share and especially to respond to some of the questions and concerns that people have. Ministry is a wonderful place to be, a wonderful service to render. I would hate that we would talk about it as if it's only one that has a lot of stress associated with it.
Good.
But the truth is, there are a lot of dangers that we court in ministry, and well, be it uh, our responsibility to address some of those tonight.
Fantastic. Again, gentlemen, we are delighted to have you with us. And so we're just going to go ahead and jump in.
Let's jump
Dr.
in.
Henry, where are we starting tonight, Doc?
We're going to start. Listen, we're talking about what some years ago Time Magazine said is the number one killer in the United States, and that's stress. So we're going to start right there.
My Lord.
So when you look at ministry, right, you look at all the components of ministry, as far as pastors are concerned, what's the current state of pastoral stress in ministry? Are our pastors stressed out, burnt out, just based on your perspective on ministry? What's the current state of pastoral stress? Are we managing it right? We're not doing it right? I want to come with Dr. Gracia first.
Current survey and revealed that 75% of pastors report being extremely stressed.
Wow.
Yes, or highly stressed, 75%. And we also realize that 90% of them work very hard, 55 to 75 hours per week. 90% of them feel fatigue and worn out every
Mm,
week. 70% say, according to that survey, that they are grossly underpaid. That causes stress too, because we know finances, relationship, and time is what really cause those things. 40% report a serious conflict with church members at least once a month.
mm,
78% were forced to resign their church. 63 at least twice.
mm.
Um, 80% will not be in ministry 10 years later,
Wow.
and only a
Wait,
fraction will
wait,
last
wait.
long.
What was that last one again?
80% will not be in ministry 10 years later, and it's
Mm.
a lifelong career. So this is really serious. And when we consider the major reason for that, we are dealing not with tangible. We are dealing with the abstract in our language. I've never seen my real boss if I'm in a car dealer and that car dealership, you give me to sell 10 cars for the month, I sell 14 cars. That level of dopamine, and Dr. Curtis will really relate to that and confirm what I'm saying here. Um, when you work, there's that effort you put, and there's a reward that will alleviate your stress level for what you would have done, and that will help us cope with stress. But our reward system depends on what is the opinion of members.
Wow.
Maybe the person think you were talking directly to her or to him at church while you've spent hours preparing that sermon, and you hear a comment that was not that nice, although somebody else may say, good sermon, pastor, but you already say to yourself, that person always find me to be good, but this one. So our appraisal system depend on people's opinion most of the time. I
Mm.
do know we reach certain things. So, and dealing with the abstract and all of that put us in a place where we are constantly stressed, and no wonder you should be stressed, because you're called to be so many things: to be a preacher, to be a pastor, to be a counselor, to be a conflict manager, to be a business manager, educator, schoolmaster. You have
Wow.
to be the youth motivational speaker, the men's psychotherapist, the woman psychoanalyst.
Wow.
And then when those people hear those bad news, they dump them on you. And let me quickly say that I received during COVID a news. This is all a member called me and say, Pastor, have you heard that Pastor so and so died? I almost dropped, because to him,
Mm.
I can handle that. And we end up dealing with
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
members' issues and dealing with things that would need a setting that would be very professional, but they bring their burden to us and it affects us. It brings a toll on us. So the 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 number of persons that are stressed in that profession is very, very high, and our stress level is higher than the one of post-military deployment. So those who
Mm.
are, yes, it's less, and the research Barna Institute confirmed that in many research that shows that we are more stressed than them, than those militaries.
Wow. Wow.
Oh my. Wow.
That's man. So that's Barna, and they're pretty reliable. Credible
I'm still
research.
stuck on that 80 after 10 years, 80%. Now I'm assuming, Dr. Gracia, that that's Christian pastors, or is that Adventist pastors? Is that
That
what's
was
the
Christian pastors.
Christian pastors? Oh, pastors. Okay. All
Mhm.
right. So I wonder if we have any of that information, or if it differs any within the Adventist
When the Adventist
church.
church,
That would be very curious to know those numbers.
right? That's what I was thinking. So, Dr. Fox, say, coming to you too. Same question. Get your perspective on it. What is the current state, of ministry as far as pastoral stress? What are some of the common things that pastors are stressed about? Common stressors.
Oh, looks like he might be a little frozen there. Is he frozen?
I think he's frozen. He might be frozen.
And that's
Okay.
stressful. That can be stressful to be frozen. And,
T-
and
Technology was a stressor coming out
Yeah.
of. There we
yeah,
go. I
Oh,
think he's with
I
us
think he's
that
now.
back.
was
He's back.
just until he comes back, I could say, being in front of the camera for the past 2 years during the pandemic era was also stressful to see yourself and to be constantly on. That was also a stressor. The pandemic did not help, and
Right.
the stress of not coming back. And thank God, Dr. Foss is back. Not at 40% like some of our parishioners came back, but he's 100% back. Let him talk.
All right.
Go ahead, Doc. I think you're back now. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah, I think So we asked about the common stressors that pastors face.
I'm wondering. Doc, are you with us? Dr. Fox?
Oh,
Hi.
is that me?
Yes. Yes, there you go. So Dr. Henry was asking, did you have anything to contribute to that last question? Yes. It sounds like there must be a lag in the audio.
There's a big lag in the audio. Okay. All right. Let me do
Are you
this.
hearing me?
Yeah, now I'm hearing you. Okay. So what we're gonna do, and we tested everything. Let me go ahead and see if I could connect with him to kind of let him know what's happening, because I don't think he can hear us, Pastor Paul.
Yeah. If let him ask him to maybe go ahead and click
Come
out
out and
and
come.
yeah,
Yes.
come back in. All right.
Okay. All right. You go ahead and I'll
In the
just kind of.
meantime, Dr. Gracia,
Yes. Yes.
maybe I think it could be helpful if we define the term when we say stress, or we
Yes.
talk about stressors. What's the difference between a stress and a stressor? How would you define that? How would you talk about
Yes.
those things, particularly in the context of pastoral ministry?
Very good. Very good. Stress can be defined as the state of worry, and you worry and a mental tension. That's the what is stress itself, and the stressor would be whatever triggers that stress, and and being in that state of worry and mental tension that caused by some difficult situation. That difficult situation, that pressure, is the
Mm-hmm.
stressor. And I always want to connect things with the Bible. I want to be a little bit theological and practical. When we see where the prophet was running from Jezebel words, this was the stressor. And he run
Mm-hmm.
and got so distressed to the
Mm-hmm.
point that he would now lose confidence in God.
Yeah.
And that was caused by the words, the threat. That was a difficult situation, that mental tension. And we can see some of the things that cause it too. You will see, if you read the text, the prophet left his servants midway. He was isolated. And
Mm-hmm.
leadership is lonely. That's one of the
Ah,
things that
wow.
happen to us.
Yeah.
Leadership is naturally lonely because of it's just inherent to the nature of what we do. Certain things you cannot freely share. You cannot be yourself all the time, not around everybody, because you are under scrutiny. And as a result, you find yourself isolated. You are you have debt against what is due for the conference, what is due for the family, that daughter you did not take to that show and still hold it from you. So there's so many pressure and tension. So the voice of Jezebel could be, you're not good enough, not good
Mm.
enough for 500 persons in front of you. And those things get at you in a way where you will be affected whether you want it or not. And when I continue to be a little bit theological, although you have been to the mountaintop, Elijah killed the prophets of Baal, and all of that was done, but the prophet was still depressed because there was one particular member, one person who said, I am not pleased with you.
My,
And
my.
pastors tend to be people pleasers because that's the profession. And most of us are agreeable. And according to Jordan Peterson, there's those who are agreeable. They tend to really please people naturally, and it can be developed as you learn how to not to hurt your own self. You tend to be agreeable to make things happen because of this is inherent. This is intrinsic with what we do. You want the project to work. You don't upset them because people are not paid for that. People are not paid. You cannot I'm not saying you should be laissez-faire with everything, but you cannot be like the corporate world. You don't do this, and that's the consequence. You end up accommodating things that in the world that are not accommodated. So as we have learned that behavior to say yes more than we should, and
Mm-hmm.
that leave us with enough boundaries, and having to help so many persons, having to deal with so many tension. So it will bring a toll on us as pastors. So not able to say no and not managing your time, it will affect your time, and it will
Mm-hmm.
affect also, once we say time management, the discipline you have on yourself. So that will create that type of
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
stress.
Wow.
So it's
Yeah.
inherent. It's inherent because you end up being a people pleaser.
Right, right, right. And
Most
that would cause some undue stress, right? Definitely.
exactly.
Yeah. There's a lot in there, boy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Dr. Fox is back now. Dr. Fox, all right, good to have you back here. We were just talking about the stress in pastoral ministry, and what are some of the common stressors that pastors face today, and what's the current state of pastoral stress? Go ahead.
Well, I heard some of what Dr. Gracia said, and I think he was right on. The research is clear to us. I mean, work done by Banner and his group, and certainly by Lifeway as well, have extended some of our understanding of the nature of pastoral stress. I have done some research on this myself, and maybe I will talk a little bit about that. But when asked about matters of challenges in ministry, discouragement, and distractions were rated high. In fact, about 50% of pastors report that they face a lot of distractions in their work and a lot of
Mm,
discouragement. Now, discouragement is a mother of depression. They talk about stress and pastoral stress. It's a real concern. It's a real concern for perhaps all pastors, and we can talk about that. When I studied pastoral families, I identified 5 stressors that were endemic to pastoral life, and these are mobility, the extent to which or the frequency with which ministers move or are moved from place to place.
Wow.
Of course, there are reasons why that, of course, is an issue, and I'll talk about that maybe. But mobility, constant moving from place to place, from homestead to homestead, from district to district, from conference to conference, can impact ministers and their families in very significant ways. Compensation has been noted as well as one of the significant stresses of ministers. You should know that if you were to list 500 and I believe 90 something professions, ministers with regard to academic preparation rank in the top 10 in terms of their academic preparation, but pretty close to last with regard to remuneration. Ministers, because
Wow.
of their calling and because of the expectations that they live with, are expected to live as people who are well to do, so to speak, but are not compensated in ways that are consistent with that expectation and therefore can create for ministers a significant amount of stress. Time demands. The minister is torn often between the demands of family, of church members, conference, and the other organizations with which he worked. And as such is generally pulled in many directions. Dr. Gracia was correct when he talked about the fact that ministers work more than usual. In fact, many ministers work more than 60 hours a week in ministry, and that itself can become a very significant stressor because it might impact sleep and rest and the other necessities of self-care that a minister is expected to engage in if he were to be healthy. And then there is also, fourthly, I would say, I would call it lack of social support. Lack of social support. Ministers live in an ecology where they are not allowed to use the social support around them. Look at it this way: ministers live with and around a lot of people. They are friends of many, but they are friend to none in a sense. The people that they work for are not necessarily the people that they fully engage in in nurturing relationships, and therefore they appear to be in the most friendly environment, but are not always able to have the crossover necessary for sustaining relationships.
Wow.
So the minister, and also because of the movement and some of the other factors, the minister and his family allowed to suffer lack of social support because, again, they are pulled away from their social networks quite often to move to another place. That's an example of what happens for ministers. And then the fifth significant stressor is what I called intrusiveness to the boundaries of the family, congregational intrusiveness. Congregational intrusiveness would maybe relate to the fact that ministers are often owned, if you will, by the church and the people. Their children are owned by the people. The people can tell the minister how to live and how to be and how to dress, and the wife how to dress and how to be, and the children how to live as good pastors' children, and so on. So that kind of intrusiveness to the boundaries of the family create, again, significant stress for ministers. So I could go on, but those are some of the factors I think that really impinge upon the minister and create some very significant reversals in their personal well-being.
Wow, those are all very fascinating things, and it really brings us to that next question. I'd like to kind of dig in and drill a little deeper on that. As to when we talk about these stressors, we've talked a lot about how they impact and affect the pastor himself. But gentlemen, can we talk just a little bit more about how these stressors impact the pastor's family? The wives, the children, and the church. Is there any way in which the stressors on the pastor somehow goes outside of his own zone, outside of his home? Are there times when those stressors that he or she is facing impacts the church itself? Since Dr. Fox, you kind of finished with it, let's go with you, and then we'll go to Pastor Gracia.
Well, thank you for the question. And when I hear it, I think about a few things right here. For example, the question can go with the assumption that the work of the minister would impact only the minister, and sometimes it impacts the family. But I think we're talking about the pastoral ecology. The minister really doesn't get to minister well without his family, at least be some source of support to him. So in a sense, it's like Mary and the little lamb, where one goes, the other is almost sure to follow, so to speak, so that the stress of ministry impacts not only the minister, but impacts the minister's family. But let me talk about that. So many years ago, when I did research on pastoral stress, I built a model that suggested that the 5 stressors endemic to ministerial life: mobility, compensation, time demands, lack of social support, and congregational intrusiveness. I wanted to see how those impacted the minister's family, so the minister and his spouse and children. And when I developed a model like that, I found this, that all the stressors together impacted the minister's marital satisfaction, the minister's parental satisfaction, and the minister's life satisfaction.
Wait a minute. Hold up. Let me stop you there, Doc. I
Go
gotta
ahead.
ask this. So you're saying that how stressful or whatnot a board meeting is, the criticism that a pastor may get on a sermon or on his job for performance, may somehow impact his marriage.
Yes, yes. Let's talk about spillover effects. Um, we talk about work spillover. What happens at work may very well be taken home or goes home with the minister. And so the spillover effects come from work to family. So that certainly if one is accosted at the board meeting and is put on edge and feels discouraged, and is distracted by what's going on in the congregation, at the church or the church board, it would it would be easy to see how that would go home with the minister. Not always in every case, and not at the same level of intensity, but certainly those kinds of stressors then would go home with the minister and can impact the way he relates to his wife, or husband may impact the way he relates to his children or her children. And those things are real, yes. Ministry then
Wow.
can be really debilitating to the pastor's family, his marriage, his parental satisfaction, that is his relationship with his children and theirs to him, and his and his spouse and or her spouse, and also the quality of life
Wow.
that the family lives is maybe a function also of the ecology in which the minister is called upon to work.
Wow. Good stuff. Dr. Gracia, anything
Well, he
that you'd
said a
like
whole
to
lot there.
yeah,
Wow.
a whole lot there.
Yes.
Anything, Doc, you'd like to add on the
Go ahead.
impact that these stressors have on the family or on the church itself, on the church at large?
Have you ever been in the presence of a nervous person on your pulpit? Maybe somebody is about to do the scripture reading and you are all the way down and you can feel how much the person is nervous and make you nervous. We speak through emotions. We can read each other. Our hearts from a distance of 10 feet can communicate to each other. In that in that environment, as Dr. Curtis said it well, we pass it on to our family, to our congregation. A stressed pastor will really affect the environment naturally because, for instance, the way you handle a question at a business meeting will reveal your level of stress. And people with chronic stress level will carry that hurt and that state of mind and really create more trouble. It's unfortunate to say that some pastors, it's pathologic where they 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 have a pattern where everywhere they go there will be some problem, and it's not that they are intentional to create trouble, but something was not healed. You give what you have. You cannot give what you don't have. So a broken heart will bring that, and because also defilement, and when the enemy finds us to be so wounded, the enemy takes residence in a broken heart. It's like the door is open, and when that happens, there is division. There's a lot of conflict, and we cannot. The Holy Spirit would not work when there's no unity. It was when they were in one accord, and it creates that same phenomenon around the family as well, because you want to please everybody. No one can have two masters. And when, for instance, I'm going to go back to the car dealer. The car dealer goes home. He knows that now I'm going to sell I'm going to concentrate to my family and give them time. But when the pastor goes home, he has that call to answer again, because we are pleasing the
Mm-hmm.
members and somebody will be frustrated. And the wives, the family will get that frustration, and not being happy will also affect the pastor, and it's a vicious cycle. And I want to share with you that when there's not the release of dopamine that gives you that reward, that you know that what you did was worth it, so you go back with a low self-esteem. And those research also show that many pastors have a low level of self-esteem because it's not based on something that should be healthy, but on
Wow.
people's opinion. So because of that, you are affected. And if your self-esteem is affected, you don't really trust yourself, you are not going to function well. So it really affects, it's a domino effect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Uh,
Fascinating. Yeah, go
can I
ahead,
say
Doc.
something about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like that, and I just wanted to underline it too, because I
Mm-hmm.
think that there is that cyclical effect happening too. Because if, for example, the minister is impacted at work, brings it home, you would get either an increase in the level of intensity of that stress now being sent back to the church environment. So the stress minister can go to the board and the members and so on and so on in the church environment. And because of the stuff he or she is dealing with, can actually exacerbate the level of stress in that environment as well. So the intensity is going back and forth and increasing every time. They say magnetism and anxiety need two poles to keep up the potential. And in this case, certainly it's true that the pole at church and the pole at home would create that increase or in the intensity of anxiety in that system, and can have significant results as well.
Wow, that's good. Doc Henry, before we go to the next question, I mean, we've had so much here that it just, well, we'll maybe get into that next question once we get there. But I wanna highlight a question here that I see from Rodney Smith. And he's asking us
Mm-hmm.
to address the increased rate of suicide among pastors. Are we seeing an increased rate, suicide rate among pastors? And if we are, do we have any data, any information on what's contributing to that? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
Okay, let me say, we are part of the population, and there's an increase in suicide all over the population. The pastor is a sample of that population, and we should expect it naturally. While in 2021 we had, I was about to say only, but I would not say only,
Mm-hmm.
21,000 of murder case. I will not say only, but you will do the math when you hear the result of, or many people kill themselves in the same year, 2021. We had 47,000. 47,000 compared to 21,000 who were murdered. And that year we had a lot of mass shootings, and right here in America. So that says something about that population. A pastor is a member of that same population. So what affects the population, just like the divorce rate, we have 25% of our pastors getting divorced as well. So because divorce is happening in the general population, we are not extra human. We are human who are um, having a divine mandate to work, who should know better, who should do better, but we remain human. That's the first thing we need to establish. And right there, you see the presupposition that if the population is increasingly committing suicide, the pastor should not. And this is a good presupposition because we are
Hmm.
dealing with God, and this is normal to have such presupposition. That I don't want even to call it a stereotype or anything like that, but
Hmm.
we are seen as superhuman, and being seen as you superhuman give you also that false expectation that you can hardly meet. And that's one thing when you feel disappointed in yourself and you're disappointing those who expect you to really perform at a certain level. And then this type of depression, and if we are among those who are the most stressed in the world, and guess what could happen, we should be among those who kill themselves the most because of that, because it's depression, anxiety that will push to suicidal thoughts. So to answer that question, I'll use my example. I had a headache that would really be painful at the back of my head. And I went to all the doctors I could meet until I met that specialist who studied in France. And as I stepped into his office, and then he was looking at me, so you're not looking good. And that result of your stress headache, and while I'm looking at your examination, you don't look good. But what is your profession? When I say I'm a pastor, he started to laugh. He said, "That's what is killing you." My brother is also a member of the, and notice the brother is from the Catholic faith, but he said it's the same thing. He said that's the only place you have no rights to choose your own entourage, and you cannot fire
Mm.
if you try them to see that it's not working, and that constant stress. And there's something happening now where members think they will give you people around you that is the opposite of you, and they want it to work.
Mm.
When, as Dr. Fox said it earlier, encouragement is very important. And that's why the word encourage is to bring courage to you. Your source of courage should not be from the inside all the time. Your entourage, your environment should bring in courage to you so that you could
Mm.
be courage. But these are the persons, for them to show that they are doing a great job, they will report that I'm not afraid of him. I confronted him on that thing. And I'm here to oppose. I'm
Wow.
here to tell him. And this is your support system that should have been there to help you carry that stress, because it's too much. It's too much burden.
Wow.
And talking about that too, you are the one to make the last call. You are the one to really, when there's a situation, you make the call. And so you are leading 1,500, 2,000 persons, 2,000 individuals, and you have the last word. And
Hmm.
that alone is stressful.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, they will turn to the pastor. What does the pastor say? Even if there's opposition, but they still expect you to perform and to deliver when there's crisis. So
Hmm.
even during the COVID time, they expect you to say a word of comfort when you are grieving yourself. And believe it or not, those families become our family at a point, because we tend to get emotionally connected, because we have seen those babies, we dedicated them, they
Hmm.
grew, we baptized them, we married them. So these people are part of us. So when it's time for them to be buried, a part of us is gone, but
Mm.
it's so many of them. So who is there to help us grieve? And that's why I'm having that call the last weekend of this coming month, April. We'll
Hmm.
have a grief retreat. It is that grief retreat will help people who are grieving, because after COVID-19, a lot of us, we are now seeing PTSD to an extent that we have never seen it before. that crisis of suicide. That's what caused it. And also, nobody is talking about that. 47,000 persons died through suicide, and
Wow.
nobody is making any alarming sound about it. And I'm grateful for platforms like this where we can share those statistics and also discover what is underneath it. And we are not at the solution level yet, but I'll stop there. When you're ready for that, I'll talk more.
Yeah, that's powerful information, and I agree. Just listening to you gentlemen share this information tonight, um, I'm gonna just pause for just a second here, and we're gonna come right back. So we're gonna ask our guests to stay put for just a second. Um, because if you are just joining us this evening, we want to thank you for joining us at Pastors Roundtable tonight. This is a Friday night edition. It's a little out of the ordinary, but listen, my goodness, if you have just joined us, we've got just a little over half of this conversation left, but we want to invite you to do one very important thing right now. What is that, Dr. Henry?
Yes, listen, this is the feed. This is the show that you must share. And listen, share it with your pastor. Share it with your pastor, he or she. I believe that when we get into when we come back and we talk about some strategies, I think it's going to impact our pastors, impact our organization, so that we can do to protect our leaders. Listen, some of these things that we're mentioning here tonight, of course, all leaders can use it, because we are in a society right now where things are just so stressful. People are dying by suicide, right? And we want to make sure that we prevent that by putting in coping strategies, by just creating an environment so that we can have support. So please share this, because I think that this is going to help.
Listen, let me share with you, our audience, too, a couple of quick things that can help. If you don't know how to share, maybe you're watching on YouTube, it's a little more difficult to share. If you're on Facebook, you can just kind of hit that share button and it'll share. But if you're watching on either of those platforms, let me tell you one way that's just very helpful in helping other people get access to this content. Just hit that little thumbs up button. If you just hit that, you'll see right under the video screen, there's a thumbs up button. Any kind of a thing that you do there, just you typing, saying, hello, I'm here. That helps the algorithms kind of process that somebody's watching this and makes those algorithms want to share it with other people. So we want you to engage with the platform. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up, hit that like button. Even if you hit a thumbs down button, that helps too, quite frankly. But don't do that. We want you to just type in the chat. The more that you type, we want to know where you're watching from tonight. We've seen folk again from all over, but just let us know if you're watching from here in the United States. We know we got a big, we're broadcasting to the South Central conference page, South Central. Hello, we love you guys down there in South Central, or up there for me. My conference, my home conference, Southeastern. We're broadcasting to our Facebook page. We always want to welcome our Southeastern crowd, but let us know where you're watching from. That's always going to be something that's helpful. We also want to let you know that you can go, if you've missed any of the Pastors Roundtable broadcasts, you can go over to the PRT.live. The PRT.live, that's our website. There you can browse all of the past conversations that we've had. Great conversations that'll help you keep ministry relevant, resourced, and real. So we invite you to do that. You can also find there ways to support this ministry at the Pastors Roundtable. There's a support page there where you can browse some merchandise. You can find ways to just financially support this ministry. It takes a lot. It takes more than we thought it was going to take once we got started. And this is a ministry that is funded from these pastors that you see on here, Dr. Henry, Pastor Wade, and myself. So we solicit your support. We thank you for those of you who've already been helping along over the past year or so. Once we started soliciting your support, thank you so much. And for those of you that are going to in the future, we want to thank you in advance. Let's hop back into
Let's
this.
Get right back in. Yes, sir.
All right. Here we go.
Good stuff, Pastor Paul. All right. Well, listen, you all have just been dropping a lot of knowledge, a lot of information. about stress, pastoral stress. And right before we go to some coping strategies, I know that's a question that we have. I want to just dig a little deeper into this thing, because we talked about how the church, just the environment that we live and the role that we have. Stress is there, and how to navigate through that and what it does, how it impacts us. We understand that. You did a good job of describing that to us. But there were a list of things that you mentioned, Dr. Fox, about what causes or what are the common stressors that pastors deal with. And a few of those items that you mentioned, it seems like the organization has a tremendous impact on the pastor's stress, right? So
I saw
I'm
that
going to ask
question
this
in the chat. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask this question. The organization, how much does the organization bear, or do they bear any responsibility for undue stress for the pastor's family? Do they bear any responsibility? I'm going to start off with Dr. Fox.
Let me
Thank
tell
you,
you how
Marilyn.
I would answer. Stress is according to Hans Selye, the father of stress research, the non-specific response of an organism to any demand that is placed upon it.
Okay.
Having said that, let me say that stress must be seen as different from stressor. So a stressor is the thing that we might implicate in the response, but we must also bear in mind that as individuals, we have the capacity for immunologic response, emotional, I am speaking about, to immunize ourselves against the stressors that come from the outside of us.
There
So
we go.
I want to say that, so that we got to be very careful in thinking that the environment is responsible for my stress. If that were true, then it might also be true that rhinoviruses causes the common cold. Virus would cause the common cold. But I would say that rhinoviruses, according to research, doesn't really cause the common cold. It predisposes us to the common cold. But immunologic response of the body wards off that the virulence of the virus.
Oh, this
So
sounds
in
dangerous.
the same way that I have the responsibility to immunize myself against the invasive forces that come from the outside of me. So having said that,
Come on, preacher.
I
Come
would
on,
say
preacher.
that,
I'm
yes,
waiting for you.
it
I'm
would be
waiting.
better
I'm waiting.
for-
I'm waiting.
it
I'm
would be
waiting.
better for me to think that I have a personal responsibility to manage my stress.
Ouch.
And having said that, I would say that the environment in which we worked is shaped not only by me, but by people outside of me. So they help in great measure to shape the environment. They help to create at we might say the macro systemic level almost, or the policies and the ways of being in that environment, and that may actually allow me to have a better response in that environment.
Mercy.
So I would say yes. So if you are an administrator tonight, I think we should also think that we can bear personal responsibility for managing in a certain way as well. If, as Dr. Henry suggested, moves are made without consultation, the moves, though they're inevitable, can become more burdensome to somebody who was not consulted in the move, even though you may have to go that place. The consultation with the person may show a measure of respect for that person, and maybe for their supporting spouse, that would help to ease the burden of that move, inevitable as it might be. The matter of economics, minister and stress, the expectations of the minister incongruent with the salary, let's say, of the minister. Maybe we should sit at the table a little more in the larger administration and consider, how do we help to manage this? Yes, the minister must have responsibility for learning to live within her or his means and learning to be astute at financial management and et cetera, and learning not to borrow money to live by the budget. So yes, we have that responsibility, but at the same time, perhaps it is true that the organization can sit down and consider what is the best living wage. And look, this is not endemic to Seventh-day Adventism, because most denominations around the world, the ministers in those organizations would tell you that they essentially take the vow of poverty, and
Sure.
and that's a fact. So yes, so I think I would say that administrators in any organization and at all levels must sit down and consider how it might construct its ecology for the optimal functioning of the minister. If mobility might be a factor, compensation might be a factor, time demands can be a factor, lack of social support can be a factor, and congregational intrusiveness, as I said earlier, could be a factor. But we can provide environments, and we could provide the kind of continuing education and support that would help a minister to function better in those environments. So yes, I would say we can all sit at the table and we can all play our part. First, ability for managing my own emotional being and destiny. And as leaders in the organization, they must take responsibility for helping to provide a richer environment in which ministers can thrive. And I will, let me just say this. I work for a conference that is called the Georgia Cumberland Conference. And I hear my leaders say that they want us to take a day off every week. They almost demand it. That they have programs for families. I'm just telling you what I know here. That I can have a weekend at a wonderful campsite around the lake at least once a year with my family for free, etc., etc. And they constantly remind us. They have the ministerial department organized to care for the ministers and have teams of people and ministers commiserating around matters of common concern. So I think that we can, where we stand, help to change some of the old ways of being in favor of the new way, where the minister is asked to care for her emotional being, well-being, and the minister is asked and even encouraged, even demand to take care of his personal well-being. So I just thought I would say that. I rest my case for now.
Wow.
Good stuff. Listen, hey, Dr. Henry, I want to throw this question in. It's coming from one of our viewers. Says, don't pastors put high expectations on themselves by having a Messiah complex? How does that factor in to some of the stressors? Not stressors that are necessarily external, but what about some of those internal ones? And I think we kind of touched it a little bit earlier on, but I just want to, Dr. Gracia, you want to take a stab at that, and then we'll throw it back at Dr. Fox as well.
Partly, this question was answered in, if we see what Dr. Curtis just mentioned. It's up to us, mainly the responsibility to manage our stress level. So it is delusional to think that you are more than superhuman. Usually, the environment creates that, because if someone wants to be at times a little bit down to earth is seen as being not having enough protocol, not following uh, tradition, not and sometimes they are outcast even by members. I've seen it. I've seen it, especially the not the young people. The young people want you to come out of the box. But I've seen congregations where if you dare not wearing a tie, you're in trouble. They do it even with their own. We have to be realistic. um, there are churches even now, if if a member is dressed a certain way, that member is judged. That's why even the young people that are in church, come on, that's one of the cry of the millennial: accept us. Now, if I'm hearing from my board, my church board, Sister Potato is criticizing my youth leader for wearing a jean, for having jeans on, and now I wanted to unveil that thing that I'm human by doing the same thing on a Sabbath morning. Depend on the congregation. Maybe some congregations are blessed to do that. Some pastors are have passed that. Some are blessed to do that. Depends on where they started and how they get through. But it's not really something pastors choose to have. Some people may have a too great expectation of themselves. That is true, but usually it is conditioned by the environment. The expectation comes from them most of the time. So it's not always that they put it on themselves. It's not always. It's not always.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. Well, I could comment on that, if you will. There are two, I call them norms that are significant in pastoral life. One is called pedestal effects. The minister appears to be or is placed on a pedestal. Face it, that's the truth. Okay? But there are two factors there. One, because of the environment in which we were cultured, perhaps many ministers come to enjoy being placed on a pedestal.
Ah, boy.
And many churches insist that the ministers be on that pedestal. How do we contribute to that? Sometimes the way we preach and the way we teach. We always give the impression that we are perfect human beings, but they are not. The ones that we must serve and call up to this high standard of living. But we have it all together. Everything is right.
Mercy.
All is well in Zion. So when we live in that culture, we remember we help to shape that environment too. So on that pedestal, we live and think, therefore, we shouldn't have mental health problems, or we shouldn't be depressed, or we shouldn't be discouraged, or we shouldn't be overworked, because after all, we are working for the master. Pedestal effects. Another is what we call anti-fraternization norms. And I referenced the fact that ministers who work around a lot of people are often deluded by the fact that they are not really with the people as much as they might appear to be. Because there are laws, so to speak, that govern the interactions that say, don't let them know how human you are by getting close to them. Stay away. Have professional relationships with these people. And that mindset actually disallows us the ability to really relate to people as real people, since we are not real.
Wow.
Wow.
And
Wait,
therefore,
Wait, Doc,
yeah. Hold.
our needs are
you
not
got,
met.
Doc, you got to slow down here. You got to slow down here.
Yeah, say that again. Repeat that for us
You're
one more
dropping
time.
bombs here. We need,
Okay, a relation, call it a friendship, if you will. A friendship is a relationship between two people, and they both minister to each other in that friendship. Otherwise, maybe it is not a friendship. It is more like a social worker relationship, or maybe a pastoral relationship. But a friendship is one where with someone else, you have some nurturing relationship. I give and you give. I pray and you pray. I have need and you have need. We can encourage each other along the way. I got your back.
Yeah.
Right? So that becomes a nurturing, emotionally nurturing relationship. But I think that much of the way we've been cultured into ministry have allowed us to think that we are so distant, pedestal effect, from the people that we are not allowed to have nurturing relationships with them. And the absence of those nurturing relationships actually preclude us from having our needs met in the context of the environment in which we are engrossed. And I think somehow it's a misunderstanding of the nature of relationships. To me, when I read about Jesus, I saw him hanging out with the people that he served and caring and loving them, spending nights at social gatherings in the homes, say, of Mary and Martha, and Lazarus. And I think somehow that says to me that maybe we can get close to people, but these norms, the anti-fraternization norms, now I know there is a place for boundaries, right? So don't get me wrong on that. There is a place for boundaries, but if we draw the boundary line in ways that negate our own needs for social interaction and emotional nurture with the people that we work for, then where on earth would we derive our nurture? Then I say, if we don't get it there, we must organize to get it in other places with professional peers and maybe therapists and others who can help us. But if we deny the reality that we have those needs, then we are courting a lot of problems.
Yes, I would like to add to that. In our structure, as the question was raised earlier about the institution. Most
say, Doc, can I because I wanted to go back there, but let me give you a little extra to address here, since you're going down that route. So one of the biggest stressors that I have found among my colleagues in ministry over the years has been fear. Pastors are afraid that they will not be effective in their preaching, they won't be effective in their evangelism, that they won't reach the goals that their conference has set for them. They are afraid that if they say the wrong thing, that seems like it's countering something that administration wants to do. They're afraid they will get moved. They're afraid they won't get the evangelism budget. They're afraid that, and fear of moves. That's one of the biggest things that keeps a lot of pastors silent from speaking up, from saying things, because they're afraid that because that move, as was mentioned earlier, that's going to impact their finances. It's going to impact their family, their wives, their kids in school. It's going to impact, for some, it's the status of what type of a church that they're pastoring and where they're living, all that kind of stuff. They're afraid. You've got pastors who are pastoring almost their entire career in fear because they're either afraid of administration and whatnot at the conference level, or they're afraid of the members in the local church. And all of that's kind of tied into the institution, whether it is the institution that they oversee or the institution that oversees them. How do you deal with that kind of a fear when you're looking at those type of solutions? Pastors become afraid to hang out. I know pastors who will not ride in another car with the pastor that they think that the administration has targeted for something or another. They don't want to be seen
because you're guilty by association.
Guilty by association. They don't want to hang out with him. They don't want to sit at the same lunch table with him when the pastors get together. And so so it's fear. I mean, there's a lot of this thing that fear that governs and that characterizes how pastors pastor in many cases.
Right.
What are some of the solutions? Well, first of all, am I far off? Well, I know I'm not far off the mark. I know what I'm talking about here.
No. Right.
How? What are some of
So
the
the coping
solutions?
strategies. How do
Yeah,
we cope? Yeah.
there
How
you
do we
go.
cope with this fear and the fear of being in an unstable? No. How do you cope with being in an unstable situation? Instability
Fear,
is your situation. How do you cope with that?
fear that somebody might snitch on you if you got an idea that's just different. Or
That's this is very, very, very important what you
Yeah.
mentioned about fear, because sometimes it is developed out of a false perception. I've seen it, and I'll use my own example. Um, when we don't understand who we are working with, we are afraid of the wrong boss. That's one thing that we need to bring to that table, because we are dealing with the work of the Lord. At times, we believe that we are working with the administration when we are, after all, above all, working for God. And when I have that dimension correct, it brings confidence. That supernatural aspect, whenever we remove it, we turn it into a work environment that is not having that element of faith. When that is happening, I've seen individual using manipulation and all that you mentioned, Pastor Paul, being afraid of associated with somebody that they may. I'll use my own life as an example. The relationship that I've nurtured with my true boss, who is God. I remember I was in Jamaica. I'm a foreigner. I was born in Haiti and I studied in Jamaica, and I was blessed to be hired there. Um, I quickly became a church pastor, district pastor, pastored approximately 25 different churches there, became ministerial secretary. But through it all, I've seen there was I want to be practical, if I may. A pastor gave me an advice, say, Gracia, you are new and you are not from here. I will advise you to be close to that very leader in that field you are going. My answer to him is that I already have a leader that I'm close to. Say, who is this? I say, God. God sent me there, and I have that confidence. And when that confidence is in you, it is seen. You will not manipulate. And that's why I agree with Dr. Folks. A lot of things will have to come from us first. A lot of things from within, and that relationship, that vertical relationship. If we forget that, we are not working for Amazon, we are not working for Apple, we are working for God. And when we forget that, we will think that someone has power over us, and it will. But okay, now let me speak in the eyes of an administrator. I've been an administrator before. There are guys who could just contact us and talk to us as leaders, but they gathered rumors about how mean these people are when they never even tried us. And even at the local leader, at the local church, I have young people who came to my board and said, "Oh, board meeting is always against young people." I said, "Sit down and give me a good 5 months and tell me if it is your experience." People act upon stereotype and preconceived ideas and forget that God is with them. That's one aspect I can mention. And also the system had some issues, talking about how we can help with fear. You should be afraid of sharing with the one who is your judge and acts as your lawyer when it is not Jesus. Because why I'm saying this, at times our system used to have the ministerial secretary to be the president. They used to have that It is changing now,
Yeah.
but they make them now the vice president who sit in ADCOM, too close to the president. And right now, some individual that would be a human resource person, the HR for the pastor should be the ministerial secretary, where if I'm having an issue, if the pastor wants to share an issue he's having with his family, he could feel free to do that, and not thinking this is the same guy who will make decision on me. So that fear, there's a role administration can play to kind of as it was previously said, we need to put those resources there. And I would say pastors can still be cautious and be at the same time vulnerable. It's the balance that is needed, and when we have that balance and the administration actually create a platform to allow them to come. Jesus said, "Come unto me with your burden, and I will give you rest." We need that type of voice. And one of the things that is missing because of the competition, I would say it at all level, because of that competition, we are not as caring and loving as we should. One of the cure, allow me to enter into that cure. What we need is love. If I feel that my administrator loves me, I won't be afraid of you. In love, there's no fear. And we should not use another um, um, solution until we go to why we came there at the first place. They will recognize that that conference, that administration is doing my work if you guys love one another. And there are certain moves, there are certain things that are being done, they are not reflecting that love. We care more at times about the institution more than the people. We care more about the institution than the people. And we should see the individual first. And as long as we don't do that according to the model that love first, there will be fear, there will be stress, and there will be all those other effects that we mentioned. So what we really need, let me go straight to it. We need more love. We need more love and less fear.
And stuff. All right, our time is just about up, but I want to give Dr. Fox, if there's something you want to add to that issue on fear. I think Dr. Gracia did a great job at addressing that. Anything, though, that you want to add to that that discussion?
Yeah.
There are real factors in an environment that could engender fear. But fear also may be a function of one's psychology, right?
Okay.
Some people have those innate fears going on for them. They're always guarded, always somewhat paranoid. If you were to do an assessment, you would see that they maybe would score high on the paranoia scale. All right. So that's there. So again, it is not just that the environment might be causing it, the external environment. The internal environment may also be a factor. Here's what I think, just to sort of comment briefly on this. There's this idea that I try to sell sometimes. It is this: if I can say that I am worthful and precious and special only because and simply because I am who I am, and that nothing I do would add to my value, and nothing I fail to do would take away from my value, then I believe I would move to a higher level of emotional functioning. And I think some of the fears we have are associated with attitudes about myself, that I am an incomplete person, that I am less than, that I am to be compared with others, and therefore I am not as good as, and I would not be treated as well as, and so on. So I think sometimes we have to correct the first notion. I like what Dr. Gracia said. First, my first boss that I answer to is Jesus. My relationship with him makes me, and my worth, that is, a constant that there's nothing I do that would take away from that it would add to my value, or nothing I fail to do would take away from my value, the value he has for me. And that allows me a freedom to be and a freedom to become. And if we could get that right, some of the issues that we faced, in fact, many, would really disappear. I don't think Satan would like it.
Mercy.
Good stuff.
Listen,
Good stuff.
Pastor Paul, we have really been at the feet of these professors teaching us the impact of stress, how to cope with stress, some of the strategies. And I also want to thank our viewers. I'm looking here at the comments, and Rodney Smith and others, I mean, just mentioning ways on how we can kind of cope with the stressors of life, like spending time together outside of church, things like that. I think will help us so that we can manage these stressors more appropriately.
And Dr. Henry, if you allow me, Pastor Paul,
Sure.
Since we did not touch them directly, I would say that apart from a relationship with God, as Dr. Fox just said, I believe you should be in charge of your life as well. Build a schedule, create boundaries. And right now, I have the most department in my conference. But guess what? I'm finding more time for my family. Or is it possible?
Yeah.
Because I create my own life. You can create. You're the arbiter of your own destiny. You don't have to say yes to everything. You can be in control. Create your own schedule. Create your own pattern. Have self-discipline. Go to the gym. Do those things. Develop some hobby. Have recreational time with your family. Take vacation. Do those things. When you come back fresh. Make it a duty. Put it in your schedule what you're going to do, and that will help you. And get enough sleep. Get enough sleep. Eat well. These things will help you too, because you notice Elijah, when God put hands on him, God fed him. He did not give him another sermon. He gave him food. He could go. So he could not stay under that juniper tree, where he was also suicidal. So for our caller who asked the question earlier about stress, it's old. The prophet was suicidal. So let's do these things. Let's take care of the body, because there's the psychosomatic effect. If my body is healthy, the Holy Spirit will use me mightily, and I don't have to worry. God did not give us a spirit of fear.
That's good.
May God bless you and take care of yourself.
Listen, what a delight it's been to have you gentlemen with us. I almost feel like we just still kind of just scratched the surface of some of these things and some of these issues. But we are grateful that you've taken the time to help us at least get into it and breach the topic. I suspect that there's a lot of our listeners who watch this live tonight, some who are watching this on the replay, who never imagined that so many of these things that you've shared with us tonight are impacting their pastors. And so earlier, Dr. Henry, you mentioned to our listeners that they need to go and find their pastor to come and to watch this show, share it with them. I'm saying I want church boards and church members to hear this discussion tonight. So if you've got a head elder, an elder staff, a church board that you think I think they need to hear this as well, so that they can help make sure that that what happens with the pastor and his family, that they know that what happens there is also going to spill over into the pews and into the mission, the larger mission of the church. I'm seeing Thea saying we need a part two.
We need part two. Yeah, that's our our tag here, man. We just need a part two on every show. But Pastor Paul, again, to our visiting guest here that's on the show, thank you so much for coming and just sharing with us. We really appreciate you. And Pastor Paul, We might have to do that part too. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. All month long, Dr. Henry. Very quickly before we leave, share with our audience, what are we doing this month? Is there a particular theme that we're looking at this month? Talk to us in the month of March.
Yes. First of all, this is a month that we're dealing with family issues, pastoral family issues, and so we're going to be dealing with raising resilient children, how to raise resilient children. And then we're going to be dealing with infidelity in the ministry. So those are some of the topics that we have coming up. We want for you to make sure that you tell people that something special is happening here at the Pastors Roundtable. And Pastor Paul, should I just say the closing words, man?
Just before you do, I've got something that I want to share. Dr. Burden, our pastor down in Miami, Bethany, texted me while we were on the air, had something he wanted to make sure that we mentioned tonight, and I want to honor that. Where is it? We created this. Here we go. On tomorrow, if you are in South Florida, you don't want to miss this. The Oakwood University Aeolians are going to be in South Florida tomorrow. The concert is at the Bethany Seventh-day Adventist Church down in Miami. You see the address there. It begins at 6 p.m. I understand they're also going to be up in the Delray Beach area tomorrow morning during the 11 o'clock worship hour. So if you are anywhere in South Florida, you want to come and check out the Choir of the World, Dr. Henry, the Oakwood University Aeolians. We're so proud of our young people and what God is doing through them and with them. You want to make sure that you take advantage of this if you're anywhere in the South. Some of you might want to hop in a car and make that drive all the way down to South Florida. Some of you might just be across the road there. But come on and support our young people down in South Florida. All right. Other than that, I think we're ready. Dr. Henry, listen, we thank you all for joining us tonight. We thank you for helping us here at the Pastors Roundtable, assist you in helping to keep ministry relevant,
resourced, and real. God bless.
And real. Good night, everybody. We will see you next go round.